what we will do is we will monitor that. So obviously the boys, Nick, Tim and Matt, are on board as well tonight. So they'll be monitoring the chat, and we'll make sure that all the questions get asked throughout the process. So type it into there, and we'll be able to answer that so that we can then help Pam and Jason. If there is any questions, we can make sure that they get answered. So if you do obviously want to say something or you want to make a comment, please, again, don't just unmute your microphone. If you can just keep that professional etiquette and just pop a question or just say, I'd like to say something, just pop that in the chat and we'll come to you throughout that process. So again, thank you very much for being here. And before I hand over today to Dave, I'll quickly just let you all know that the Assembly is running a courtesy service at the moment called a Club Health Check. So if anybody hasn't had a chance to have a look at our first webinar recording, I actually record them all and we send out the link so you can watch them. Have a look at that, and I can send it out again after tonight, but have a look at that and just see if it's something that your club might want to take up. It's a completely complimentary service, and what we do is we go through and we help you audit your club from all aspects, from finances to governance to membership to policies and procedures, and we are happy to help you guys through that. So what it does is identify all the things that you don't have and allows you to put a plan in place to be able to get that up to scratch. And obviously we have a bit of time at the moment, so we have got that. And if you have any questions about that, let us know and we'd be happy to give you a call and set that up. We've had a few clubs do it already, and it's been a really, really good process. So I'll hand over now to you, Dave, our Executive Officer, and he can take it from here.
No worries. Thanks, Rebecca. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to have Jason talk first to give us a football update, and it'll start with the return to play document that was circulated on Saturday and the key points that have come out of that document that you will find relevant. And then Jason will move on to any other points that he wishes to make. And then after Jason has done his bit, we'll have Pam talk about a netball update from Netball Victoria. And there was an update newsletter that came through on the 15th of April, and Pam will start off by going through the key points from that, and then also touch on what's happened in the last week, which I think include an AGM on Sunday and a key meeting yesterday morning. So, and then after that, we'll open the session to questions, and then I'll close it in that. But I'll hand over to Jace. What I will ask is that we will try not to, for the district league clubs, we'll try not to be too repetitive for what you may have heard last night at a President Secretary's meeting that you were involved with there. But hopefully we'll be able to get some information to you from Jason and ourselves and Pam that is relevant. And also, we know that there is a lot of supposition in the community at the moment, not just our community, but the whole community. So what we're talking about tonight is purely based around where we are at this point in time. Okay, so where we are at this point in time. So we'll try not to get into hypotheticals or supposition or anything like that. We just want to lay out the key points and the key things and the timelines and dates that you will need to know. So Jace, if you're ready to go, once again, thanks very much for giving your time tonight. We do appreciate it, and Pam as well. And we'll throw over to you if you're right to go.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, and thanks for the opportunity to come on this forum. I do apologise to the people who do have to put up with me for 2 nights in a row. Before we do get started, Dave, it's great to see everyone on board. It's good that Lizzie West, last time we had a forum, Lizzie West had a camera on the side all forum, so it was quite. It's good to see that she's got it going the right way. I will start by saying that all our conversations with the District League and the Wimmera League have involved netball as well. So, Pam, I hope I'm not stealing too much of your thunder, but you may be able to give us a little bit higher level when you give us an update. So, probably for those that didn't know and didn't get the document, there was a return to play document that was put out by the AFL on Anzac Day, so last Saturday. Probably the key points around that was that the National Cabinet are developing a set of principles, not only just for football and netball in our region, but for sports right across the country. So we do have to look at the big picture and realise that we are, football and netball is just one sport in a very big family. So the National Cabinet will develop those guidelines. Now, look, there is the possibility of easing some restrictions around mid-May, and obviously the National Cabinet will meet on May 10th, so we'll certainly get a little bit better indicator of what's happening then. And then obviously after that, so May 11, it's a bit like Christmas really. It can't come quick enough. May 11, the Victorian Government will make some announcements around the easing or maintaining of the current restrictions. So really that is our key date, May 11. After that point, then we can start to roadmap where we think we can go. We'll probably get a better indicator of the amount of crowds that we can have at any of our competitions. Now, obviously, to come out of the District League meeting last night, that there really is no opportunity to play without crowds, and the general consensus from all the clubs was that anything under a crowd of 500 is probably not going to be a viable option. So that was a good thing to come out of that. Probably the best thing to come out of that meeting is that there is a real focus on getting the juniors out at some stage and playing some football and netball. It's really we've turned our focus from, if we cannot get a senior competition going, then we really need to concentrate on our juniors. And as I said last night, I think the seniors understand the situation and where it's at and the ramifications of what's happening. But I think to a certain degree, some of the juniors have just seen the fact that we've taken away their sport. They don't understand why it's been taken away. So the pleasing thing out of that meeting was that the real consensus was that we need to look after our junior competitions, and that'll be a high priority for us. Once we get that May 11 announcement, it'll really focus us up on where we're going to go. The time constraints that we certainly have around delivering football and netball, we do have to realise, as I said before, that football and netball does have a legislated set time within the year to operate. So if we were to go outside that, we would need some sort of change to the legislation. Now, I think that's quite achievable, and obviously at the present moment, AFL Victoria and Cricket Victoria are certainly having some conversations around the possibility of moving that. So that's a moving document as well around if cricket can allow us to extend our season, and vice versa, whether we can give cricket some extra time at the other end. So there's been some really good talks going on with other sports. I suppose a rural community, we need to also factor in not just sport, but work as well. The further we go deeper into the year, in our rural communities, we run into harvest and the busy time that is. So we do need to consider that as well. So it is really a moving document, but it feels a little bit like we're flying blind at the moment because we don't have the rules that we can play by. So we're certainly thinking behind the scenes, and there's 13 of my colleagues that meet 3 times a week via Zoom and the other formats that we're mapping out every scenario that we think may happen. So rest assured that behind the scenes, there's certainly a lot going on. But I think that probably just gives a snapshot to the people that haven't been involved in any of the district or the Wimmera League conversations. Thanks, Dave.
No worries, Jace. So in relation to the discussion around legislation and going past September 30, for example, can councils play a role in assisting the start of the negotiations at all with football and cricket, do you think?
I think they will have a part to play in it, Dave. I think it's probably got to come from, I think AFL Victoria and Cricket Victoria need to need to really send some clear directions around what they want from their associations, and probably that's more from Cricket Victoria's point of view, that they need to send down the line that yes, it's okay, we give you authority to do that. But I would totally agree. Councils at when we get our roadmap, councils are going to be so important to what we want to do, because it's not normally what we do. So if we go off our train tracks, we generally need help, and councils are going to be really important in that.
So given that fact that they will play a role, do you think that there would be an opportunity to start discussions sooner rather than later?
Yeah, look, I think Mandy might be online, and Mandy and I have had some conversations. But yeah, you're probably right. It may be time that we start to bring cricket into that conversation, and start to really ramp those talks up. It is a bit of a catch-22 situation. You don't want to, you don't want to waste people's time in the fact that we have all these conversations when May 11 comes around and they say, no, we've got another month of the same restriction. So May 11 will be a really defining time, so that's when we can really throw the doors open and say, righto, this is where we're going to go.
Is pay-per-view an option, do you think, Jace, in relation to the proposals that are being talked about over in the Bendigo area around the live streaming of the senior games and the ability of the clubs to garner some income from that as a home club, if pay-per-view is an option? And would there be the capability and capacity here in the Wimmera for that to occur?
I think it's, and I love the way people are thinking outside the square, and it's a really, when you throw it on the table, it looks like a really good option. But I think, and this is just my personal point of view, and I know that the Wimmera have videoed their games in the past, and I think the consensus out of last night's meeting, which this theory was brought up, that if we were going to do that, I think the community would like the 4 football games videoed and all the netball games videoed. So it does become a little bit of a cost factor. Thrown on top of that is that obviously when we run on the football court, we run on the netball court, there's some fixed costs that are going to happen straight away. The general consensus was that clubs financially would probably not be able to absorb those costs, and it would be unlikely that you would get enough subscribers that would cover those costs. So, but I love the way that it's been, everyone's thinking outside the square, and it's certainly something I didn't think of, and I know that was the Heathcote District League that brought it up, and I love the fact that people are sort of, being inventive and looking at all those ideas. But I think probably from a financial point of view, it probably wouldn't be very viable.
Okay, no worries. Thanks, Jace. I'll let you just sit tight for a bit, and we'll hand over to Pam, Pam Ferrari from Netball Victoria. Thanks, Pam, for popping in and helping us tonight, and I'll throw to you with regards to a netball update.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you very much for the opportunity to catch up with everybody via Zoom and see lots of faces online. It's great. Netball Victoria, like all other sporting organisations, postponed, put off, cancelled matches up until the 31st of May, which was the advice that we had. And as Jason said, the current advice is we're waiting until the 11th of May for the statements that come out from government as to what they're going to allow us to do. And while we can make lots of arrangements and lots of scenarios around what we might do and what we hope to do, we have to wait until that happens. We are hopeful that there will be something come out of Cabinet tomorrow. They're meeting on the 1st of May, and part of their discussions are around community sport, not just at the elite level at AFL, but at community level. So we're not aware at this stage of whether we will get any advanced warning. Knowing government, we probably won't. We'll probably have to wait until the 11th of May. Netball Victoria was in the unfortunate position that we had to cancel our association championships and also our state titles, which were big events for our netballers across the state. And those were talent identification opportunities for our players. So now we are working on scenarios around how our talent identification process and our pathways might look going forward. And there'll be an announcement coming out in the coming weeks about that. Netball has been proactive in making sure that they're putting out advice constantly on our website and updating via our EDMs to communities and to our participants. We're also sending out emails not only to our people that were part of Netball Victoria in 2020, but people that were part in 2019 that are yet to register for one reason or another, because seasons haven't started in some cases. So all of our communication in future will be going out to everybody that was registered in 2019. And a lot of that will be around scenarios that we're working on in return to play. As Jason said, I know football and netball in country areas have a traditional time that they've played between beginning of April and the end of September, but there's no reason that netball has to follow those. We have opportunities that we can play and that we can create different things, and a lot of work is going into how that might look. And it might not be the way we normally play at club level and at league level. It may well be a combination of two. May also involve juniors that are playing or that will play at association town-based competitions. But there are lots of things that netball can do, and we are quite positive that we will get netball back on the court before the end of the year, and that there will be netball played. As I said, may not be in the traditional way that we played it, but it will be played. There are lots of things that netball's looking at around timeframes for games, changeovers between games, looking at how we might be flexible with rules and flexible with accreditation. We're very fortunate at Netball Victoria that we've maintained all of our staff. All of the staff are working with a 20% reduction in hours and pay, but all of the staff still on board. So all of our departments are still working, right from our CEO down to all of our country people that are in the regions. So we're all still on board, and we're all still working towards getting netball back on the court and getting back to play at some stage this year. Thanks, Dave. If there's any, I know there are a list of questions. I'm happy to answer those at some stage.
So can we touch on the refunds at all, Pam, do you think?
At this stage, because we're quite positive that we will get netball back on the court, that is on hold at the moment. We have got a working group within Netball Victoria that are working on that. They've also had discussions with Sport and Rec Victoria, with a lot of other associations, around the fact that at some stage there may need to be refunds. If there are people that are in hardship cases at present and they have paid and they don't believe that they will get back on the court, they can put a case to Netball Victoria, and each case will be looked at individually.
Okay, no worries. Just one back to you, Jace, if I could, please. Just an interesting one here, and if you can't answer it, that's fine, but it really, unfortunately, it's resonating with our community, and you know what I'm talking about here when I say, the question is, do clubs have a responsibility to check in on their players, coaches, and stay connected to their members, do you think? What's your view there?
It's probably really relevant at the moment, isn't it, Dave, with the tragedy that we've had in the past couple of weeks. So I would probably suggest that we don't minimise that to just the clubs. I think probably as a whole community, we've got the responsibility to check in on each other. Knowing the people involved at clubs right across the region, I think that they probably would be doing that anyway. But I don't think we probably should load that on the shoulders of just the people at the club. I think that's probably a whole community approach that we should take to that.
Okay, thanks for that. And also, just in relation to the hub, you've got Jenny French back on board. So I guess from your perspective, you breathed a huge sigh of relief when Jenny came back. Just the operation of the office, for want of a better description, now that you got Jenny back on board, please?
Yeah, and it certainly was a huge relief. It was a fair burden on my shoulders for a good couple of weeks there. So no, Jenny is back on board. So the AFL Wimmera Mallee rack was obviously down to me at one stage. So Jenny has come back on board. So all correspondence should be directed back through Jenny through her operations email. So she's back on board. As far as Steve McQueen and Howard Shear, they're currently still stood down. That scenario still plays in that case until we obviously find out where football and netball is going in the future.
Also, in relation to the talks that the Wimmera Football League was having with the Wimmera Netball Association and the possibility of coming together in a merger, obviously that would be put on hold now, but is there still any discussion at all about that happening?
Look, there's no discussion at the moment, Dave. Obviously, all my focuses have been towards supporting the clubs and the umpiring group, and obviously AFL Wimmera Mallee. So no talk at the moment, but it's still in the background, and we will certainly address it at some stage.
Sure, no worries. Okay. Well, I'm happy to throw it open. If anyone wants to ask a question at all of either Jason or Pam, probably do the old put your hand up and I'll introduce you, or you can introduce yourself and you can direct your question if you like. So I'll throw the forum open now.
Dave, there was just Beck. There was a couple that I had that we hadn't asked, probably to both of these guys, and you may not be able to answer them, obviously. But when will you make a call on the season if it's too late to get it started? Is there a time frame that you have that it becomes just no, we're not going to play this year?
I presume that was for me, Beck.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, no, you're right. So the Wimmera League have decided that to have a valid season, they need to play each other once. So that would mean a 8-round, there's 9 teams, so 8-round season plus finals. The district are the same, so there'd be a 10-week competition plus finals. So that's what they're regarding as a valid season. Now, the timing of that, obviously, if we stuck to what without extending into October, then that sort of falls around that early to mid-July point. But again, if we can pick it up and move it back a little bit further, then it gives us that little bit longer to make that decision.
Yeah, excellent. And I think there was only one other question that I had emailed to me, and it was in regards to the Western Bulldogs. So I'm not sure if that was something relevant, but what is the stance at the moment with the Western Bulldogs players that were selected, and what will be happening with those talent programs? Yeah,
it's a real frustration of mine, because obviously it's a pet love of mine, seeing those young boys and girls come through that Western Bulldogs program. Unfortunately, all the staff at Whitten Oval have been stood down in the Next Generation Academy program, and obviously May 11 will give us a little bit more direction. We're crossing our fingers that we can maybe get that group together and do something later in the year, but for the present moment, that program has ceased, along with all the NAB, the under 18s and the under 16 programs, which is disappointing for the kids involved.
Beck, can I just jump in there? From a netball perspective, we've worked on a number of scenarios around how a season might look and when it might start, but there's no reason that that netball can't play. The only reason that the netball courts in some of the community areas might not be able to be used is if they're tennis netball. If they're not tennis netball, then there's no reason that netball can't play. And as I said, it might not be a Horsham district and a Wimmera season separate. It might be clubs that still have a desire to play, and we're keen for them to play. Then once those government restrictions are lifted and we know how many people are allowed to gather at any one time, then there's no reason why netball can't get back to some style of play.
Thanks, Pam. That was great. Thank you.
You go on, Rebecca.
Thanks,
I think we've got 2 more there.
yeah, so I think this is something we've talked about at the Assembly a lot amongst the staff. I know it's something that is definitely front of mind for us, is that if there is going to be extensions to the leagues, and obviously if that means that dates are going to go outside what they normally would be, which potentially may be what we're going to be looking at, is there plans to have conversations with other sports? Because obviously if our grand finals that are historically in particular places get extended by 4 8 weeks, that it is going to impact on other sports. So I suppose it's to Pam and to Jason, from a state sporting organisation perspective, are you talking to other state sporting organisations, e.g. basketball and things like that, so that if this does happen, we want to make sure everyone has the ability to play all sports, and that football and netball just extending doesn't cut out that potential from tennis, cricket, every sport that we have out there, basketball. So that was just a question.
Yeah, all state sporting organisations are meeting with Sport and Rec. They're meeting with local government. They're meeting with Vic Health. They're making sure that all sports are involved, and they're all having discussions around the same thing, when we might return to play and how that might impact on another sport. We're also mindful of the fact that if we push it out too far to start, we are impacting on those guys that are doing Year 12 exams, and we need to be aware that they already have got their studies impacted by studying at home, and we don't need to put any extra pressure on them by having finals being played at a time when they need to either be studying or doing exams.
Yeah, excellent. And Jason, do you think there's something that can happen locally? Is that something that's on your radar to potentially work with council, and obviously us as the Assembly, to have some type of action task force from representatives from all sports? Because once this information comes out, we all are going to have to work together more than ever now to be flexible, so that all our sports can actually get back out there and start up.
Yeah, definitely, Beck, and we understand and we realise that we are part of the sporting family in the Wimmera Mallee region, and we will certainly play our part. Yeah, look, it's really hard, but I will stress that any recommendations for a season to get underway will just be recommendations from the AFL. Ultimately, it will be the Wimmera Footy League and the Horsham District Football Netball League that make the decision on whether their season continues and what their season looks like. So it'll have a higher recommendation, but it'll have a local final decision.
Sure. And I think another question we have here, if crowd restrictions are still in place, would it be possible to play over Saturday and Sunday, as in seniors one day and juniors the other day, like other leagues do? Is that something that would be open to be talked about?
Yeah, definitely. Every scenario is on the table for us, Beck. If we have the ability to play Friday nights, we certainly will use all the opportunities that we have and all the facilities. And again, that's where Mandy and the council are going to be really important in Horsham, and then obviously in all the other LGAs as well, to maybe facilitate that to happen.
Excellent. And is it ultimately going to be, and you may or may not know this, and it might be a question for the board specifically, but will it ultimately be the decision of the club to whether they wish to participate, if or not, whether they do choose to take part in it, just obviously because of that financial implication? So another question that I have here is that obviously without canteen, without gates, those kind of things, as you said, there's a certain cost that happens prior to taking the field. So, if clubs feel that they aren't viable in a financial setting to be able to do that without that income coming back in, will it ultimately be their choice to say that they don't want to participate in the season?
Yeah, as I say, I don't want to talk for the board, but at the start of this crisis, Beck, the charter from AFL Victoria was that our aim was to lose no clubs in all of this. So at the end of the day, if a club comes to the board and say, we don't think this is financially the best decision to make for us this year, then the board would certainly consider that and give it due process. So we're certainly not going to be forcing clubs to go to the wall financially on the back that they think they have to play in a compromised season. So it'll certainly be the board's decision. decision, but obviously in consultation with the club. So our main aim at the end of this is that when we do get going in 2021, fingers crossed, that we still have 11 District League clubs and 9 Wimmera League clubs. That's our main aim.
Excellent. Yes, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it, for everyone? Was there any other questions? I'm just trying to monitor that as it's coming through.
Rebecca, Cluffy's got a question.
Sure, hand it over to Mr. Clough.
Back in primary school, eh?
Yeah, he tells me off for calling you Mr. Clough.
Thanks, Rebecca. Look, a number of mine are really regarding the social distancing, because until we have no social distancing, there are a whole range of work things to do with particularly volunteers in a sports medicine particular area. People who are trainers, for instance, are in very close contact. There's also an infection control. There's a time factor engaged in keeping facilities clean between one person and another. There's also about what happens, if a person is has COVID-19 and it's discovered it, and it's the contacts and within a club, the situation. I'm sure these are all sorts of things that have been probably discussed, but it does raise some issues, including older people like myself who might have comorbidities, and people who will have cancer, women who are pregnant, for instance, will have an issue, with training. I know the Australian Sports Commission has put out quite a bit of information about that. And for instance, like in Victoria, massage is still a prohibited occupation, remedial massage and myotherapy, and that obviously won't change within the next few weeks, I would imagine not. Although I do notice that both South Australia, Queensland and the ACT have allowed the return of remedial massage in the last few days. So there's I guess a number of things there about all to do with social distancing.
So Cluffy, is the question more around, have the football, netball clubs consulted their sports trainers at all to see if they are prepared to start, just based on what we know now? Don't worry about what might happen or anything like that. I think your question is more relevant if it is the clubs have had the discussions with the sports trainers now.
Yeah, I don't know whether any clubs will have, but I mean, I can only talk about one club that I'm particularly involved in. And I know they were all items that have been addressed by the Sports Commission as issues that clubs need to think about and talk about. There's also the aspect of, player screening, for instance, and yeah. So there's
is that document readily available to be shared?
It's simply a case of going onto the Australian Sports Commission website. I mean, I can find it for you, and I can actually forward it to you. And there's a whole range of questions there that clubs and organisations need to look at, and most of it revolves around social distancing at 1.5 metres.
Yeah, so just a simple nod of the head. Would that information be advantageous to the clubs? Yes. Okay, so if you can do that, Cluffy, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Jay, Vic Sport's doing work around that sort of thing at the moment as well, probably more at community level rather than at elite level. And I know Netball Victoria, Netball Australia are doing work around if we're looking at a 12-week season, what should the lead-in be for that season? What should the pre-season be? How long before should we allow our players to do a pre-season before we throw them on the court to play? And that's all being worked at the moment by various working groups. So once we get some final decisions, that information will be shared.
No worries. Thanks, Pam. Just in relation to the question around where Jason was alluded to before about clubs making sure that the clubs stay sustainable and operating. There was a submission put up to Cabinet today by Sport and Rec Victoria in relation to a financial rescue package. That package is firstly aimed at the elite level sport, then state sporting associations, sports assemblies, and then filters down to clubs. So there will be some form of assistance, state government assistance, hopefully coming in the future. That the people that put that submission, the project control group that put that submission up to Cabinet today, were able to make sure they put forward their argument correctly. Mandy and I have had input into a local government survey, which was to be fed into Sport and Rec Victoria and hopefully up the chain as well in relation to assistance. So that information that report will come out sooner rather than later. And also, without putting a timeline on it, the second package that's coming from state government is called a stimulus package, and that will be directed at grassroots sporting clubs in helping them to retain or attract their members. So retain their existing members or attract new members. And the crux of that will be around making access to your club affordable. So once we have information on any of those two there, we'll share it with both Pam and Jason as well as everyone, so that you're up to date with that information. And then that might help those clubs, especially those that may have a paid secretary or something like that. It may help them with some stimulus funds as well.
And there was one question, probably for Pam and Jason. A person's posted, Rosemary, that players have asked if they are at home training, does their current insurance cover that? So if they're registered and paid for the 2020 season, does that in fact cover them while they're training at home?
Jason?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so the Marsh insurance, which is the old JLT, is a 24/7 cover. So yes, they are.
And the Netball one covers them, providing that they have paid their 2020 registration, does cover them for training.
Thank you.
All right, so does anyone else have any questions or comments at all that you'd like to put to any of us?
Dave, if you like, I can just share my screen very quickly.
Me? Oh, you? Yeah, righto. If you can share it, you share it. Keep going, Cluffy.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's good. Yep. So is that where you're directing people, Cluffy?
Just while you're doing that, I've just got another question. Has there been any concerns for clubs in regards to their players and their contracts? As that has, those questions have answered up, is that with clubs not being in a strong financial position, are they going to be able to honour their contracts? Has any clubs got any feedback on conversations they've had with their players, or how that's been approached, or potentially how that's going to leave clubs that don't have as much financial ability at a disadvantage to other clubs? Does anyone have any feedback on any of that stuff?
Jace?
I think obviously we've encouraged all our clubs to have an early conversation with their contracted players. And I think a lot of them have done that. I think we're in an environment where obviously it's really different. So from my perspective, I hadn't had any feedback where clubs are struggling to negotiate that. And obviously after May 11, then those talks can obviously continue around what the season looks like and if we do get a season. So I haven't had any feedback to say that any club is struggling. And I would imagine most of them would have had that conversation with their contracted players.
Has there been any activity on the salary caps in either of the Wimmera or the District League, Jace, that you know of?
Yeah, there has, though. So the AFL released a recommendation for the salary caps, and both the Wimmera League and the District League have adopted those. So there's an initial cut of 50% in the salary cap straight away, and then obviously that works after that point works on a pro rata per game basis. So hypothetically, you have a salary cap of 100,000 now. That is automatically cut to 50. So your salary cap for 2020, if we do get going, is 50,000, and then obviously, hypothetically, we play 9 of the 18 games. Well, then you halve that salary cap again, so you would end up with a salary cap of 25,000. I will point out that we do have some local movement in that as well. So for remote teams that may need a little bit more in their salary cap for travelling, we do have that ability to pop that in as well.
Thanks, Jace. Anything else, Rebecca, that you got?
I can't see anything coming up that I'm looking back through. I can't see anything that I think we've answered everything that's in the chat. But please feel free, while you've got the opportunity with Pam and Jason, to ask any questions and clarify anything. They've done a fantastic job tonight providing you with that information. So you do have that opportunity to be able to ask them that. But other than that, I think we have probably, Dave, covered all the questions in the chat.
Beck, there was one question that that Dave sent through to me earlier in the day, and that was I'm part of a working group at Netball Victoria that will be looking at how we might assist our leagues and associations with bylaws. A lot of them have bylaws around qualification for finals, accreditation for umpires and coaches, and what the final date is for registration for players. We'll be working next week around providing some advice to our leagues and our associations on how they might be able to be flexible in those bylaws. Obviously, if you've only got a shortened season, then your qualifications for finals are going to look different, and it may well be not for a grade, or it may well be for a club. And as I said, some flexibility around match times, changeover times between games, and accreditation for players, coaches, and umpires. Accreditation for all Netball Victoria and Netball Australia courses are online and can be accessed online, but there may well need to be some flexibility around some of the other bylaws that leagues and associations have.
Jace, you got anything you want to add to that from a football perspective at all?
No, we'll be the same, Dave. We'll adjust our bylaws, and each league will do that individually, because their bylaws do vary a little bit. So, look, it's a common sense approach to a very unusual circumstances.
And we know where common sense sits in the overall scheme of things in everyone's constitution, don't we?
Yes.
Way down the bottom, if you're lucky. Sorry, shouldn't say that. All right. So I know we're 50 minutes in, and I appreciate everyone's time. If I can just leave you with 3 things. One, the Northern Territory lifted their restrictions today. They've only had 28 cases in the Northern Territory and no deaths, but those restrictions are in a 3-staged process, and they are 2 weeks apart. So the first restriction gets lifted tomorrow. The second restriction gets lifted on May the 15th, and the third restriction on June the 5th. The reason I'm saying that, pointing that out to you, is that it's going to give you an idea on where we're heading in relation to the restrictions. So it may be, from our perspective, given where Victoria is the second worst state, I would imagine, going around, it may be 3 weeks apart that these restrictions do get lifted. So so just bear in mind that the Northern Territory have started, and it's a 3-stage process. So I dare say everyone else will probably follow suit. The second thing is the Sports Assembly is working with Sport and Rec Victoria. Sports assemblies across the state are working with Sport and Rec Victoria in surveying clubs in relation to the impact of COVID-19. We're still formulating the list of questions that are within that survey. So what we're going to do is we're going to prepare a bulletin to let you know that at some stage in the next 4 to 6 weeks, a staff member from the Sports Assembly will contact your club to work through that survey with you. If you aren't the person that is the one responsible for answering that survey, if you can think of someone who would be the right person to talk to, so that we can gather that information and pass that data up to the Minister. And the final thing is, let's stay patient. If we can get the message across, please, to our members to just stay patient and don't go rogue. I mean, we've seen the NRL guys, we've seen the Freo guys. Unfortunately, we've seen something here in Horsham that hasn't gone down really well in relation to social distancing and the numbers that are participating in practice. Please, if you can get the message across to your members to stay patient and don't go rogue, because all it is going to take is one person to go rogue and a whole shooting match will go down in flames. So if I can leave you with that, I appreciate the time that you've taken tonight to come on board, and Blair's interested in knowing if you have any Darren Mullane memorabilia. Yeah, I do have. I just have to put my hand on it. So, yeah, so thanks very much for your participation. Hopefully you got something out of it tonight. I really do thank Jason, Pam for coming on board, because to get it straight from you guys who are at the coalface there of the decision, and you're probably the poor old meat in the sandwich in more cases, then we really thank you for that. And also thanks for Rebecca for coordinating it, and thanks for Tim and Matt and Nick for coming on board. And Nick, you're lucky you don't have to worry about giving a Whippets update unless anyone wants it.
And just a question for everyone, when all of this stuff does get sorted and we have that reactivation plan for sport, is this going to be something worthwhile if we try and facilitate this again, so that then there is an opportunity to be able to ask questions? So once all the information's obviously delivered and Pam and Jason have some really strict rules on what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, if we try and set something up like this again, that would be something worthwhile. We can facilitate that, because then obviously there will be another range of questions that will happen, probably from the mandates and requirements that we will need once decisions have been made. So we can definitely do that for you all. And yeah, again, thanks for your time tonight. We appreciate it. And if you have any questions, we're still working really hard behind the scenes here. So contact any of us. We're happy to help with anything. And again, thanks to Pam and to Jason for your time tonight. We sincerely appreciate it. And here's to getting our sports up and running as quick as we can safely.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.